Okay ကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီနေ့အဲ့ဒီ Matt Navarra ဆိုတဲ့ကျွန်တော် follow လုပ်နေတဲ့ social media marketing expert ပေါ့နော် social media မဟုတ်ပါဘူးဆိုတော့ Matt ကသူက UK government ရဲ့ဒီ social media consultant တယောက်ပေါ့နော်အဲ့တော့သူရဲ့ဒီ Matt Navarra ရဲ့Twitter တွေကောပြီးတော့သူရဲ့website ကိုပေါင်းညာပါလေကျွန်တော်ကြည့်နေရတော်တော်ကြာပြီအဲ့တော့ဒီနေ့က तू ဘာလို့ဖို့ရှိလဲဆိုတော့အဲ့ Amplify ဆိုတဲ့အဖွဲ့တစ်ခုနဲ့ပေါင်းပြီးတော့ဒီ social media နဲ့trend တွေပေါ့နော်အဲ့တော့ social media trend တွေဒါ Matt Navarra ရဲ့အကြောင်းနည်းနည်းပေါ့လေနော်အဲ့တော့ social media trend တွေကိုသူပြောဖို့ရှိတယ်ဆိုတော့အဲ့နဲ့ကျွန်တော်လည်းကြည့်မယ်ပေါ့ဆိုပြီးတော့တယောက်တည်းကြည့်ရမှာပြင်းလို့အဲ့တော့ကျွန်တော်တို့တစ်ချက်လေးကြည့်ကြတာပေါ့လေနော်ကျွန်တော်ဟိုဘက်လေးတစ်ချက်တောက်ပါမယ်ဦးတော့ပြောနေတာငါမကြောက်သူတို့စီမှာလဲနော်ကိုယ်လိုပဲ
I can't hear you yet
ကိုယ်လိုပဲ technical
just waiting for Imi to sort his mic and we'll be with you in 2 moments
technical error ဖြစ်နေလို့ပါတယ်အားကြောက်ကြည့်ရပဲ do I hold yoga
okay right is that better can you hear me now
we can hear you loud and clear
good there we are minor panic over let me just get rid of that little screen there we go. Sorry about that minor technical hitch, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to Amplify and Matt Navarra's social media trends 2023 and 2024, I should add. Fantastic session today, all well prepared and unlike me and microphone, but let's go. So without further ado, let's meet the panelists. I don't think many of you need much of an introduction to Matt Navarra, but Matt, let's just tell those of the guests that don't know who you are, give us a little flavor of who you are and what you do.
I will do. I'm Matt Navarra. I'm a social media consultant and industry analyst, and I work with clients that range from companies like Google through to the British government, through to United Nations and many other types of organizations as well. I write a weekly newsletter on a Friday called Geek Out. It goes to 30,000 social media pros, and I do speaking at events and things like this. So that's kind of a summary of what I do.
Fabulous. Well, welcome back again. We're very lucky to have you. My name is Imi. I've been here 10 years at Amplify. I came from the social bakers side of the business. I run a small global team now of consultants, and our job is to advise brands on how to execute and optimize their social marketing, their commerce, their customer care, their analytics, and everywhere and back again. So before we begin and dive in, I should say, we're more happy to link with you to if you've got that, a bit of luck, we'll be able to cover the main pretty much a frantic and action-packed year with lots of milestones which we're going to cover. Needless to say, there's plenty of exciting stuff coming down the funnel for next year. And as we've just sort of suggested, there'll be plenty of opportunity for questions and answers closer to the end. So let's kick off with 2023. It goes without saying, a lot has happened, and there's still 6 weeks left, so some things might more happen. So a few things more might happen. I think just some of the kind of memes we've kind of kicked around, and certainly some of the talking points, both Matt, yours and our clients have probably raised, are some of the things like, you know, private communities, some of the platforms moving to subscription-based model, perhaps, and yet more regulation. What are your thoughts, and what are the considerations perhaps some of the guests online might have around these topics?
Yeah, I think you summed up well. It's been, as always, with social media, another busy year. New platforms, changes in algorithms, regulations, new product features, and more besides, plus a small thing called Elon Musk and X. So there's been probably more than enough to pick from. So we're not going to be able to cover every single trend, everything that happened this year, but just to pick some of the bigger talking points and that we've come up with. So let's kick off with this shift to private communities, which kind of was talked about, I think, you know, several times in the last few years. We probably talked about it last year, and I'm sure that it might have even been the year before as well. But particularly this year, what we've noticed has been that platforms like Instagram and WhatsApp, a lot of Meta's platforms, have launched a lot of features that have leaning into towards private keys and private sharing, things that are around, you know, broadcast channels, things like collaborative sharing in group chats, and any features which enable you to kind of share the things that maybe you would have previously shared to feed, shared in a more private space. And lots of reasons why that has happened. One of the things that Adam Mosseri said in a recent podcast in the last few months was that all of the growth pretty much on Instagram in the last year or so has been in direct messages and activities around DMs, but also in people's use of the platform is really centered around DMs, private sharing, stories, and also Reels. And I think Reels now, we said the other week, that it accounts for 50% of the time people spend on the platform is with Reels. And so that's a challenge for these platforms because people are sharing all of their content in more private spaces, which means it's hard to know exactly what sort of things people are interested in, and for brands to know how much activity is happening around their content that they can't see, that's kind of below the surface instead of in the feed. So that's been a particular challenge. and I think we're going to see more of that coming forwards. And I think the channels, the broadcast channels, actually present quite an interesting and quite powerful opportunity for many brands, and already a lot of them are experimenting with it. So private communities has been a significant one. I think the
သူတို့ပြောသွားတဲ့ဟာလေးအချင်းလေးကျွန်တော်ပြောပြမယ်ပေါ့နော်ဟိုမှာ UK တို့ဒီ Europe တို့မှာအဲ့ဒီ private community ဆိုတာကဒီမှာအခု Messenger နဲ့ Instagram မှာကျတော့သူက broadcast channel ဆိုတဲ့ဟာလေးကျွန်တော်ရသွားပြီအဲ့တော့ broadcast channel မှာကျတော့ဒီကျွန်တော် Facebook group ဆိုမျိုးပဲကိုယ်နဲ့ဆိုင်ရာအဲ့ဒီသူတွေကစုလိုက်ပြီးတော့မှဒီ Messenger ကိုသုံးပြကျွန်တော်အရင်တော့ကလည်းအဲ့တော့ဒီ store real store ဟိုဘာလို့နဲ့ဟုတ်နော်ပြီးတော့ content တော့ဆိုလို့ဖြစ်သွားတယ်ပြောကျွန်တော် သူတို့စီမှာ technical issue ဖြစ်လိုက်ကိုရီးစီမှာ technical issue ဖြစ်လိုက်နေဟုတ်နေရလား
off the top of my head, I think it's around $15 or something like that, and you pay for each additional account you want to have ad-free. But it's the real story behind all of that is, of course, that there's the regulation, because the European regulations is going to force, or is now forcing all of these companies to get explicit consent to continue tracking and to continue to serve personalized ads. And so Meta's, I think, have been very smart and realized, well, the last time this happened, when we had the situation with Apple's app tracking, if anyone can remember that, and everyone had sent that message that said, do you want to permit this app to continue tracking you for personalized ads? The option was a yes, no, and most people said, no, please don't continue to track me, which cost Meta $10 billion in revenue. So this time they thought, you know what, instead of giving them the yes, no option, why don't we give them an option of, you can have no ads, we won't track you, and it'll be, free of personalized ads and everything else, and that will cost you $15, 15 euros, or you can continue as you are and have this product completely free, and everyone just carries on as they are. And when you give people that option, the option to choose, I'd rather just keep it as you are, thanks, rather than paying extra for it, is a much more appealing option, and we'll probably see that a majority.
သူပြောနေတာသူတို့ Europe တွေမှာတဲ့ကြော်ညာပြမလားဒါမှမဟုတ်ရှင်ကျွန်တော်တို့ရဲ့ကိုရေးကိုတာတွေကို track လုပ်လို့ရမလားမရမလားဆိုတော့ဟို personalized ad တွေကိုဟိုပြတဲ့ဆိုတော့ဒီ debate တွေရှိရပေါ့နော်သူတို့ညင်းနေခုန်နေရတဲ့ဟာမျိုးတွေသူတို့ရှိရပေါ့လေအဲ့တော့အရင်တော့အဲ့လို yes လို့ပြောတဲ့ဟို track လုပ်ခိုင်းတယ်ဒါမှဟို personalized ဖြစ်တဲ့ကိုကြိုက်နိုင်တဲ့ဟာမျိုးလေးပြရမယ်ချို့ကြောင့်လည်း no လို့ပြောရပေါ့နော်ဟို privacy ကြောင့်အဲ့တော့အဲ့ဒီအချိန်တွေမှာအရန်ကြီးစကားပြောလေရတာဆိုတော့ကျတော့အခုကနောက်ပိုင်းကဘာလုပ်လိုက်လဲဆိုတော့ဟို X premium ပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်တို့ Twitter ရဲ့premium ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကမင်းတို့ကို personalized content တွေဆက်ပြီးပြနေအောင်ပဲဒါပေမဲ့ကြော်ညာမပြတော့ဘူးအဲ့လိုမျိုးဒီ ad free ပေါ့နော်ကြော်ညာမမြင်ရတဲ့ပုံစံလေးကိုသူတို့ရဲ့ model တွေကတဖြည်းဖြည်း shift ဖြစ်လာပေါ့လေအဲ့တော့တစ်လောက်ကို$10 $15 လောက်တော့ပေးရတယ်ဆိုတော့ပုံစံမျိုးပေါ့လေ
X, Elon Musk, is it as the toxic environment people say it is? Is it seeing an exodus that some people are speculating it is having right now? What are your thoughts on some of these kind of points? And I know that we'll continue to talk about kind of the commerce angle and AI for, obviously those aren't going to go away anytime. So we'll talk about that for next year as well, Matt. But what exactly is going on with X and Elon Musk?
Well, sometimes I wonder myself. I think we're all slightly in the dark in terms of what might happen next year because Elon Musk is very unpredictable. And when he has said he's going to do things, he's also done a lot of U-turns on the things he said he's going to do. So it's really hard to gauge. But I think, in summary for this year, without spending an hour talking about all the things that went on with X, the platform has significantly shifted. The algorithm is now more open source, which you could say is useful. You can see more details about it, but it has changed somewhat. They've increased the number of options for you to have a premium option and there's now their own ad-free version if you're interested in that. But the things that are more kind of pertinent, I think, both to brands and regular users, is the fact that I think by my anecdotal experience of using the platform, certainly it feels like there's more toxic content, there's more risky content on there. I think from people like many of the researchers who've looked into the platform and released various different studies into it have also come back with the same. And the fact that Elon Musk's behavior on the platform and the risks that some of this content presents is so strong and so bad at the moment. It's shown by the fact that 60%, I think, is the figure that's been bandied around of advertisers' spend that's dropped away, or the number of advertisers that's dropped away in this year. And it doesn't seem like there's any signs of them coming back. And of course, if the subscription product, the X Premium product, doesn't backfill some of that income in a substantial way, then the question has to be asked, well, where's the money going to come from in the next 12 months, particularly when they've got a big debt mountain to pay down? I'm sure he's got a few quid somewhere in the bank. He's one of the world's richest men, but still, it's a few pounds to spend. But in terms of the actual platform itself, I think that we'll come on to what I think is going to happen later on in the year. But Threads has been the other kind of, and Blue Sky and T2 and all of the other platforms, to see if there's a rival platform. And I think there's high expectations from a lot of people that Threads would be the alternative that people wanted to be able to jump to. And it hasn't really lived up to that. And there's a whole debate around the fact that Adam Mosseri doesn't want it to be a news platform. He's not going to encourage that, but it accepts it might become somewhat like that. But the jury's still out of whether it's going to be something that's directly the same as Twitter. And I think if it is exactly the same as Twitter or X, it's going to have all of the same problems. And so in some ways, it's probably best it isn't. But so there's lots going on there. But in terms of the other platforms, that a lot of them just don't have the scale, and a lot of them have fallen away. We've seen T2, Pebble has already bit of dust is gone, and the other platforms, Blue Sky, although I find it quite fun to use, it's still very small in terms of distribution reach, which brands, creators, and publishers, crave and are looking for as an alternative to using X. So yeah, more downside coming up for Elon Musk in the next year, and we'll probably talk about a bit more in a little while. But in terms of social commerce, again, we were told last year and the years before that live shopping was going to be a thing, the thing. It continues to be pushed heavily by most of the platforms, although it's interesting that earlier in the year, Instagram backed away from live shopping. I think it was in March this year that they sort of stepped back slightly, and they clearly are rethinking how they tackle the e-commerce or social shopping piece. But in the interim, in the meantime, we've seen TikTok particularly push very hard with TikTok shops. It's had quite good success in places like Indonesia, but creators and brands. Snapchat and Pinterest continue kind of with AR try-on tools and some different ad products to tempt people to spend. Snap's having a challenging time in terms of ad spend this year, and actually was reading today that it's now trying to find ways to create brand advertising products that are not just about brand awareness and actually more about conversion and actually performance ads. So that's their particular challenge. But they've shut down some of their enterprise AI AR work, which was sort of thought is going to be a big part of what they were going to be doing, but they sort of stepped away slightly from that. So yeah, and then in terms of live shopping, it still hasn't really made huge amounts of progress, and there's some stats we'll come up to later on about how that still is not reaching the potential that people hoped and expected it to, but there's still a number
သူတို့စီမှာသူတစ်ဖြစ်ဒီTikTok ဆိုပါတော့နေပြီးတော့မှဟို live shop တွေပါတယ်ဒီလုပ်နေကြတာဆိုတော့ကြတော့ဒီ live shop က2023မှာတော့နည်းနည်းလေးကျသွားတယ်ပေါ့နော်ဒီမှာလဲသူရေးထား TikTok shop struggle ဆိုတဲ့ဟာအရင်တော့ဒီ live တွေကနေပြီးတော့ COVID အတွင်းမှာဝယ်ကြတယ်ဆိုပေမဲ့အခုနောက်ပိုင်းမှာဒီ live shop ကနေပြီးတော့မှတအားကြီး trend တွေတိတ်မရှိတော့တဲ့ဟာမျိုးကသူတို့မြင်ရတယ်ပေါ့လေ
things that are holding back AI in terms of integrating it into social media marketing teams and marketing in general. But in terms of the things we have seen it used for this year, which have been particularly interesting, it's noticeable that the Meta has been pushing more character fueled AI chatbots within Instagram based around well-known creators, whereas some other platforms have been far more keen to make it a kind of functional and less emotional tend to keep people's attention and interest more, but in terms of delivering useful, meaningful results for people, the actual functional stuff is often far better. But in terms of other things, social commerce, in terms of customer service, in terms of tools that help in terms of generative AI and producing content at speed, giving teams greater capacity and like superpowers, as people given the term to it, has been immense, and that it's now going to how are people going to reconfigure their teams what cost in terms of the business, and that's something that we're going to touch upon. But I have probably
သူအခုပြောနေတာတော့
has been
AI နဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ပေါ့နော်ဒါဆို AI တွေကတအားကြီးလွယ်လာတယ်ဟို content တွေလောက်ရတာတွေကျွန်တော်တို့ video visuals ဒါပဲလောက်တအားကြီးလွယ်လာဆိုတော့ကျတော့သူနိုင်ငံမှာတအားကြီးဖောင်းပွားတယ်ပေါ့နော် content တွေကအများကြီးထွက်လာတာဆိုတော့ကျတော့အဲ့ဒီအများကြီးထွက်လာတဲ့အခြေအနေမျိုးမှာဒီ business တွေကနေပြီးတော့ဘယ်လိုမျိုး sweet spot ကိုကျွန်တော်ပြန်ရှာမလဲပေါ့လေပြီးတော့သူတို့ကျတော့အင်္ဂလိပ်လိုပဲ brief လုပ်တယ် prompt လုပ်တယ် ChatGPT တို့ဘာလို့မှတို့လိုဘာမှတော့ပြင်စရာလိုမနေဘူးပေါ့လေတော့အများကြီးသွားလို့ရနေတာဆိုတော့ကြတော့အဲ့တော့ဘာပြောသူတို့စီကဒီဖောင်းပွားလာတဲ့ content တွေကြားထဲမှာကိုယ့်ရဲ့ brand ရဲ့နေရာတစ်ခုကိုဘယ်လိုပြန်ရှာမလဲဆိုတော့အတွေးတစ်ခုကတော့သူတို့
straight into
I'd be interested to see if people pick. Well, I won't want to influence it, but I'd have to guess that one of those is going to have a bigger spike than they did last year. But I'll hold fire before I suggest what that might be. I think people probably have by now. So I would guess that from speaking to my clients and also so to speak, virtually, LinkedIn particularly has had a good year and has a lot of people more interested in it, and not just from a B2B kind of marketplace. And I think that Instagram continues to be the biggest, most dominant influencer marketing platform. So I would expect that to be significant. But people are getting a bit more confident with TikTok, which is taking time for people to really master. So for me, those seem like obvious ones. X, that's how many people have got X? 1%.
Pretty much falls in line to what you were saying there. I think to the bookies, Matt. Well, look, you can see some of the results here. A really strong play there for in second place, followed by TikTok. So generally interesting results. Obviously, this is future gazing on that topic. Let's jump into 2024. So we here are some of the kind of the themes we've kind of agreed we
Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok ကိုပို့ပြီးတော့ ကြော်ညာဖို့အတွက်ကိုပတ်စံထည့်ကြမယ်ဆိုပြီးတော့သူတို့ပြောသွားတာပါ
Side of TikTok versus Amazon versus Meta, and obviously you've alluded already to YouTube. The whole creatorverse has got massive again, and then potentially some more live shopping. So again, unpack your thoughts, Matt, on what does this really mean for us all, and then we'll actually just touch.
Well, I'll just give you some everyone likes the stats. So I'll chuck a couple at you that kind of I've picked up over the last few months. E-commerce revenue from live stream is now they're saying it's expected to grow from 11 billion to 35 billion, but only 14% of US adults have so far bought something from a live stream event, which shows you the penetration is still particularly low. And there's still massive concerns in most markets outside of Asia in terms of handing your financial details to the likes of Muscat X doesn't seem like a thing that many people might want to do right now, and probably the same with Mark Zuckerberg and others. So that plus the issues of discovery and payment, sort of making it less friction when people are purchasing goods, amongst a whole list of other reasons, have kind of held it back. But one of the things that I think last year I might have mentioned was like this idea of, is TikTok going to be able to become more like Amazon and be a big success in terms of kind of shopping and commerce, or is it more likely that Amazon's going to be quicker and more agile and able to become more like a TikTok and have mastered commerce but needing to figure out the social piece for distribution and reach and engagement? And it seemed to me more likely that TikTok would figure out how to become more like an Amazon with the deep pockets of ByteDance. But one of the things that's happened in this year, a couple of things. One is that TikTok is the problem with shops for many small to medium-sized businesses, that their experience with fulfillment and shipping and the costs and the effort of doing that have been hard to overcome, and there's been sort of resistance to kind of getting involved in all of that, and also in terms of kind of like the other options it has in terms of they tend to weigh up as a better option. So some of the things that TikTok has done this year is do fulfillment for them. So they provided now not quite end-to-end, but almost end-to-end fulfillment as a fee to save shops from doing all of that themselves, which has helped boost a lot of the interest in shops. It's also interesting to note, I think there was a piece yesterday in
TikTok ကအခုနောက်ပိုင်း fulfillment ဆိုတဲ့ပုံစံမျိုးနဲ့သွားလာတယ်ပေါ့နော် fulfillment ဆိုတဲ့ဟာကျတော့သူက end to end ဒီကြည့်ရုံတွေမှာကပဲနဲ့နောက်ဆုံးဈေးဝယ်ဖို့အထီကိုပါသွားလို့ရတဲ့ platform တစ်ခုအနေနဲ့ TikTok ကလာတဲ့ရောက်လာတဲ့ပုံစံမျိုးကိုတတိထားမိတဲ့အကြောင်းသူတို့ပြောနေတာပါအခုဒီအရင်တစ်ပတ်နှစ်ပတ်ကပဲ Meta နဲ့ Facebook နဲ့ပေါ့လေကျွန်တော် Meta နဲ့ Amazon နဲ့နှစ်ခုက collaboration စာချုပ်ချုပ်လိုက်တယ်လို့လည်းကျွန်တော်ဟိုတနေ့ကသတင်းတွေဖတ်ရတယ်ဆိုတော့ဒီ Meta နဲ့ Amazon Meta ကသူ့ရဲ့ marketplace ကဟိုပြန်ထုတ်လိုက်အဲ့ marketplace နေရာမှာကျွန်တော်တို့ Amazon ရဲ့ Amazon ဆိုတဲ့မှာပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော် Amazon ထည့်ရဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တခါတည်းကျွန်တော်တို့ပို့ပြီးတော့ကောင်းတဲ့shopping experience တွေကိုဟိုနောက်ပိုင်းမှာသူတို့ဟိုဘက်ကနေပြီးတော့ပေးလို့ရမယ်လို့ပြောနေနေရတယ်ကျွန်တော်ဖြစ်နေပါတယ်
It's more seamless. You tap on an ad, it brings up the ad from Amazon's ad, it shows you the product, you can choose the number you want, hit pay, and you do it all within Facebook and Instagram, which kind of solves up some of the problems. Instagram and Facebook. I'm not sure how comfortable they feel about kind of having to kind of lean upon Amazon so much, and also that is only one retailer. But that time is going to be interesting to see how successful it is and how that compares with the performance of TikTok shops, which I suspect will actually have a pretty good year next year and will do very well. But it's a question of how many of the major retailers adopt it and how much it changes the experience on the platform. The other thing with TikTok it kind of lacks is it's not got a particularly robust messaging platform and kind of other social features. It's really a algorithmic feed, and it's less important who you know and the people you're connected to, unlike say Snapchat, Facebook, or Instagram. But there was a piece of news this year where they are working on new messaging features and social features. There's a whole team been spun up for TikTok to work on that, and I think that is another important part of the jigsaw for them. Also, on top of that, they're testing nearby feed, so that's something we've seen on Instagram, but they're also doing it on TikTok. So you can kind of see things. If you're searching because a lot of people, particularly younger demographic, use TikTok as a search engine. So now if you have a nearby feed and you're in London, and you're looking for really good coffee shops or whatever it is you're interested in, that will become quite useful. And they've also launched the ability for some people to add reviews and ratings to shops and to particular accounts who are selling stuff on the platform. So it becomes a much more like a marketplace, which will make a big difference for people using it. So that's been interesting. I think the other thing that's been interesting is this year, and I think we're going to see a lot more of this going forward, is this creator-led brands kind of explosion. You know, there's so many examples that we can list.
ဆိုတော့ TikTok ကသူတို့စီမှာဒီ coffee တောက်ချင်တယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကျွန်တော် Facebook လိုမျိုးကိုTikTok ကို UK မှာသုံးနေတဲ့ဟာမျိုးတော့သူမြင်ရတယ်ပေါ့နော်ဥပမာ coffee ဆိုင်တွေရဲ့ review တွေဘာတွေညာတွေကအစားသူတို့ TikTok ကိုပေါ်မှာကျွန်တော်သွားပြီးတော့ share လုပ်ရတယ်ကြည့်လို့ရတယ်သုံးလို့ရတယ်ဆိုတဲ့ဟာမျိုးသူ့အနေနဲ့မြင်တယ်ပေါ့လေဆိုတော့TikTok က UK မှာအဲ့လိုမျိုးပုံစံမျိုးနဲ့ဟိုသုံးလာလို့လည်းသိတာပြပါတယ်
200 million viewers. That compares to the most viewed Super Bowl ad that had about 140 million viewers. So it's a significant part of what people are doing, and it also leans into the fact that the idea of UGC and influencer marketing, people's trust in brands and interest in things that come directly from brands versus their level of trust and appreciation of influencers. And there's Nielsen's some research this year, and they said that 92% of consumers trust influencers more than traditional marketing or celebrity endorsements. So the power of influencer marketing continues unabated, and I think there was another stat I saw: 11 times return on investment on influencer creator kind of launches than traditional marketing tactics. So the challenge is that how does that work for small to medium-sized businesses? Because typically the large-scale multinationals, big global companies, this is a big part of what they do and has been for some time. It's now that creep into small to medium-sized businesses, figuring out how they kind of can adapt. And one of the things I tell a lot of clients now is to think and behave like a creator in terms of the way that you approach your content, the way that you approach your overall strategy should be geared as if you're thinking and acting like a creator. And some stats I saw this week around some of the things that people are most frustrated with brands online is still them selling constantly things, and kind of self-promotion is kind of one of the biggest frustrations. And so all of this kind of builds towards the importance and value of creator-led kind of brand launches. And so we're going to see a lot more of those. And so creators won't be just focused on one product. There'll be things like merchandise. And they will ultimately compete with some of the mainstream brands at the other end of the scale. And I think the appeal of it, and the reason why we'll see more success with this, because the communication with the creators and their audience and people who buy their products is multi-directional. It's not just one way from a brand selling the product, and it's mostly by video by default. It's not about the design of the product, everything else. It's about the person and what they stand for behind it, which is very hard for a brand on its own to create. There's a slogan I saw this year of people saying that faces are the new logos in terms of how brands should and are operating with success on social platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and others. And so creators for Gen Z and Gen Alpha are the reality TV stars, that work for millennials. That this all builds towards why this is a significant part of the marketing mix. And I think that will be a significant part of what we will see in terms of more of that in the year ahead. And then I think in terms of like the live video piece, sorry.
So I was just going to say, I mean, so obviously the rise of creator, it kind of comes and goes, but it's clearly there's massive mileage in it for brands. I think I'm just going to touch on live shopping just for the last point here, Matt, which is, this year, Facebook and Instagram kind of deprecated to a degree the kind of shopping capabilities. What's the opportunity going forward? And I can see we suggested a couple of markets, but what does that look like?
Also, live shopping, I think it's going to be another one of those years where we're waiting to see if the platforms can figure out a way to get traction with a range of users on social platforms. And up till now, they haven't managed to find the thing that brings people in. I think the challenge is that the way that people consume content in everywhere outside of Asia, where this phenomena has been so, such a big deal and big thing, and has been making it huge amounts of money for these companies. People consume content in different ways. The way that they use that social apps is different. The type of apps that people prefer to use in the US and Europe and other places is significantly different. And the relationship that people have, or the level of trust and they have with particular leaders of these companies and with the companies themselves is different. And that's just a handful of reasons why it's clear that the live shopping thing is going to be a harder, tougher sell. But in terms of the platforms, there isn't any signs from Instagram or Meta that they're going to return to that anytime soon. So I'm not expecting to see that particularly. But I think we'll see a much harder push by TikTok. I think only this week they launched TikTok Live Fest type activity to kind of really push that part of the platform. We will YouTube has had live for a long time. In terms of the shopping piece, it's still a bit of an unknown quantity as well. So I think for many it will be an option to experiment with it, and it's certainly the platforms have a lot of faith and trust in it and believe in it, and lots of the figures from eMarketer and Forrester and many other consultancies have suggested as well that they still predict that over the next 3 to 5 years that it will become a significant part of the way that people purchase products and buy products online. I'm still struggle to get convinced by it, but it's hard to deny some of the figures you see coming out. And also we do know that live video, as that chart illustrates, is often the most engaged with and active
သူတို့ပြောတာတော့အခုကဒီ Instagram တို့ TikTok တို့ကျန်တဲ့ဒီ Facebook တော့YouTube တို့လည်းပါတယ်ပေါ့နော်အဲ့တော့အဲ့နေရာမှာဒီ KOL marketing ကတော်တော်ကြီးကိုသူတို့စီမှာလည်းပေါက်တယ်လို့တော့သူတို့လည်းပြောသွားမျိုးရှိတယ်သူတို့ပြည်ဒီမှာ Logan Paul တို့ KSI တို့ Kim Kardashian တို့စတဲ့ဟာတွေကတော်တော်လေးကိုဟိုမှာဘယ်လောက်ကြီးပဲလူတွေအနေနဲ့ဒါဒီဟုတ်ရလားမဟုတ်ဘူးလားလို့ပြောနေပေမဲ့တင်မလားဟို influencers တွေအနေနဲ့တကယ်အလုံးဖြစ်တယ်ဆိုတဲ့ဟာကဟိုသူတို့ရဲ့ data တွေရအောင်သူတို့မြင်နေရတယ်ပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့အဲ့ချိန်မှာကျွန်တော်တို့ကဘယ်လောက်ထိများSME level အနေနဲ့ဒီ influencer marketing plan တွေကိုလုံးနိုင်ပါလဲဆိုတဲ့ဟာတော့နောက်နှစ်မှာစောင့်ကြည့်ရမယ့်ဟာတစ်ခုအနေနဲ့တော့သူမြင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်
huge. The influencer marketing spend has grown faster than social ad spend, which has been growing about 4 to 10%. Growth in influencer marketing spend has been about 15% according to eMarketer. And then there's also the fact that the influencer marketing spend per platform versus ad revenue on each of the platforms has been outpaced by influencer marketing. So all of the signals show that this whole creator economy, creator-led brands, but also collaborations and ways for not only the brands to benefit from it with their relationship with creators, but also the creators themselves. The challenge with creators has always been this thing that's been termed the middle class of creators, where the majority of them, I think there's a stat somewhere that sort of suggests something like 92%. Oh, there we go. Only 4% of creators deemed professionals, meaning they pull in more than 100,000 a year. So those are the challenges that creators are trying to solve, but also the platforms. And so what we'll see again, and we've already started to see, is that creator funds have disappeared or pretty much been pulled away. Subscriptions and affiliate schemes and ad revenue shares have kind of become the norm. I think most people, well, not most people, I think there's a large number of creators would probably tell you that they feel that YouTube has been the most consistent and reliable source of income, and actually TikTok challenges that you may become viral on TikTok very quickly and reach a massive audience suddenly, but building that brand and that connection with your audience and then being able to monetize it in quite the same way as other platforms, particularly YouTube, has been challenging. And so for them, that will be where a lot of their focus will be. In terms of other quick things, I think that there certainly has been a continued shift towards longer term collaborations. I think that it's far less often to see big name superstar influencers on one-off deals. It's more likely to be nano and micro influencers over a sustained period. For working with a brand on several projects tends to be the preferred way of working, and actually does deliver, in my experience, better results. So we'll see more of that. I think in terms of the UGC piece, I think we'll also see that that brands will become more.
တို့တို့စိတ်မှာ creator တွေတော်တော်များများ YouTube ကိုဘယ်လိုခေါ်မလဲ source of income တစ်ခုပေါ့နော်YouTube ကကြတော့ viewership နဲ့ကြော်ညာထိုးရဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ပတ်စံပြန်ပြီးပေးတာဆိုတော့ကြတော့ဒီ YouTuber တွေက source of income တစ်ခုအနေနဲ့ YouTube ကိုမြင်ရတယ်ပေါ့လေဒါပေမဲ့ဟို TikTok ရောက်လာတဲ့အချိန်မှာ TikTok ကကြတော့ဘယ်လိုမျိုးဆွဲလဲဆိုတော့ကြတော့ TikTok ရဲ့ platform ပေါ်မှာ viral ဖြစ်ဖို့အတွက်ကအရန်လွယ်တယ်ပေါက်သွားဖို့အတွက်ကအရန်လွယ်တယ် million ချီပြီးရဖို့အတွက်ကအရန်လွယ်တယ်ဆိုတော့အဲ့လိုမျိုးလွယ်တဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်ဒီ creator တွေကို TikTok ရဲ့ platform ပေါ်မှာလာလို့ပြီးလို့ရှိရင်ဒီ channel ကပေးတဲ့ပတ်စံထက်ဆာလို့ရှိရင်ကိုယ့်ရဲ့ brand နဲ့ရတဲ့ views တွေဒါမှမဟုတ်လို့ရှိရင်ကိုတိုင်းပစ္စည်းထုတ်တာပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်လုပ်ပြီးတော့မှဟိုသွားလို့ဖြစ်နိုင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်
way. I think some of the challenges for marketers and social media managers is actually how do you take advantage of the new AI ad platform features, particularly Meta, which has got things like Meta's Advantage Plus and many other new kind of tools that help to create some of these ad campaigns at speed without having to rely on outside agencies or increasing the number of people in the team. So those are some of the kind of very whistle stop kind of things that we're going to see more of and going to be important, I think, in the coming year.
Well, let's just
တော့အဲ့ social media ကနေပြီးတော့မှဒီ UGC ကျွန်တော်တို့ user generated content ပေါ့နော်အဲ့တော့ UGC content တွေကလည်းတော်တော်လေးလူနောက်ပိုင်းမှာဟို brand လူတွေအနေနဲ့ brand တွေထက်ဆာလို့ရှိရင် UGC စီကိုဒီမှာလဲကျွန်တော် 85% ပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်ညာဘက်မှာမြင်ရမှာပါအဲ့တော့ 85% ကလည်းပေးသုံးခြင်းတယ်အဲ့ချိန်မှာလူတွေနဲ့ဒီဘယ်လိုခေါ်မလဲ social media ပေါ်က user generated content တွေကိုပုံပြီးတော့လူတွေကယုံကြည်လာမယ်လို့လဲသူချင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ပြီးတော့နောက်ဆုံးချက်ကကြတော့ဒီ AI နဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့အဲ့တော့ AI နဲ့ပတ်သက်တယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်လည်းဒါကျွန်တော်တို့ကိုယ်တိုင်မှာလည်း AI ကိုသုံးပြီးတော့မှဒီ content research တွေလုပ်တဲ့ဟာတွေရှိရပေါ့လေဆိုတော့ဟိုဘယ် trend တွေက hit ဖြစ်နေလဲဘယ် trend တွေက hit မဖြစ်ဘူးလဲဘာကြောင့်တက်ကဆိုတဲ့ဟာကိုတော့ကျွန်တော်တို့အခု level up မှာဒီ content analysis တွေအကုန်လုံးကိုကျွန်တော် AI နဲ့data tracking ကျွန်တော်လုပ်ကြတယ်ဆိုတော့အဲ့ချိန်မှာ creator အတွက်ကိုလည်းပို့ပြီးတော့လွယ်ကူနိုင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်အဲ့တော့ productivity ပို့ပြီးတော့တက်လာနိုင်ခြေရှိရလို့လည်းမြင်တယ်လို့သူပြောထားပါတယ်
It can be most valuable to businesses and organizations. I think for social media managers, I think the benefits are going to be that they're going to be able to do more things than they could do before, and also be able to do things that possibly budgets wouldn't allow them to do. The tools that people are familiar with using, which is things like Canva and Adobe and Meta's own products as well. They are all.
Matt, can you hear us?
ဟဲ့ technical error ဖြစ်သွားတယ်သူလည်းတူတူပဲ UK ကတက်မလားလုံးဝ consultant social media consultant internet ပြတ်သွားရင်ဘာမှမတတ်တော့ကိုရင်းစီမှာပဲဖြစ်တာမဟုတ်ဟိုသူ့ဘက်ကလိုင်းကြတာပါကျွန်တော်တို့ဘက်ကလိုင်းကြတာမဟုတ်ပါဘူးအဲ့တော့ social media consultant လည်း UK မှာပဲနေနေအင်္ဂါကြိုမှာပဲနေနေလိုင်းကြရင်အတတ်မတော့ပါဘူးWendy ကကျွန်တော်ကိုဟို YouTube ကနေပြီးတော့လှမ်းမေးနေလို့ဒီဟာအဲ့တော့ဘယ်ကနေအတမ်းမကြမဟုတ်ဘယ်ကနေကြည့်ရတော့ ਨੇ အဲ့ဒါကျွန်တော်အဲ့ Matt Navarra ရဲ့ website ကိုကျွန်တော်
Can you hear me now?
အဲ့ကနေပြီးတော့မှ
Yes.
register လုပ်လိုက်တာပါ
How is that? Is that?
အပြန်ကြပြီလား
You can't see me though.
Yeah, back in the room. Apologies, everyone, for minor technical glitches there. I think we're back online. Let's go. Sorry, where were we?
Sorry about that. Some weird thing with the browser just changed. So we're talking about AI. Yeah, in terms of like the tools for social media managers, the way it's going to become more valuable next year is that the tools that they're used to using become enhanced, and they enable them to do the things without having to use separate products. Because a lot of the tools that come out this year have been all these new separate products. Like I've used Jasper AI, I've used Copy AI, I've used everything something AI, but they're all separate from the other products that they use. So I think it's the integration into the main platforms that people are using will become quite important. I think the other thing that will be interesting is for the customer service side of things. One of the things that chatbots have and customer service agents have been challenged with until AI was that it felt very formulaic, and it felt very stuffy, and it was all pre-written and drafted kind of set questions, whereas with large language models and the ability for these things to actually properly engage in a human way, but also to build a sense of the brand's own tone of voice and identify the way that people would expect that particular brand to speak, is going to be a substantial step forwards in terms of customer service, and also being able to automate a lot of the processes behind customer service with AI is going to also make a significant difference for people as well. I think the other thing is going to be the customization of AI and having your own AI agent. This year has been kind of using AI large language models and using these chat tools like ChatGPT and others that have been the same, pretty much the same for everyone. There isn't a lot of uniqueness to your own experience beyond the fact that you're using the same tool. But the future in the years ahead, and particularly maybe next year, will be people being able to customize a particular ChatGPT agent to be able to do specific tasks for you and do it in a way that is like your brand or like your tone of voice, or using access to your documents and access to information that's specific to your industry or your particular audience.
သူပြောနေရတော့နောက်နှစ်မှာဘာဖြစ်လာနိုင်လဲဆိုတော့ဒီလောလောဆယ်မှာတော့ဟို ChatGPT ကဟိုကျွန်တော်တို့မေးတဲ့ဟာကိုပဲသူတို့ဖြေရပါတော့ChatGPT ရဲ့ base database ထဲမှာရှိနေတဲ့ဟာကိုပဲChatGPT ကနေတော့ဖြေနိုင်သေးရပေါ့လေဒါပေမဲ့နောက်နှစ်မှာတော့ဘာဖြစ်လာနိုင်လဲဆိုတော့ကျွန်တော်တို့ဟို customer service လုပ်တဲ့နေရာတွေမှာဒါမှမဟုတ်ဖုန်းဖြေတဲ့နေရာတွေမှာဒါမှမဟုတ်ရှင်လူချင်းစကားပြောတဲ့နေရာတွေမှာဒါမှမဟုတ်ပစ္စည်းမှာတဲ့နေရာတွေမှာအဲ့လိုနေရာတွေအားလုံးမှာဒီ ChatGPT ကနေပြီးတော့မှကျွန်တော်တို့ brand တွေအနေနဲ့ပါကျွန်တော်တို့ဝင်လာနိုင်တယ်ပေါ့လေဥပမာပြောမယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဟိုမနေ့ပြန်အိမ်ကိုတငယ်ချင်း3ယောက်လာဖို့ရှိတယ်2ယောက်ကကြက်သားပဲစားတယ်တယောက်ကlike တက်လို့တမအဲ့ဒီတငယ်ချင်း3ယောက်ကဟိုလာပြီးတော့ဘယ်နေရကြမယ်အဲ့တော့အဲ့ဒီလူတွေအတွက်ကိုဟိုငါတို့ဒီပစ္စည်းလေးကိုပို့လိုက်ပါဆိုတော့ chat ပုံစံပဲရေးလိုက်တာနဲ့အမေဆိုနေရာမျိုးကနေပြီးတော့ကျွန်တော်တို့ပစ္စည်းလှမ်းပို့ပေးနိုင်တဲ့အစီအစဉ်ရောက်သွားနိုင်တာပေါ့နော်
Some of the challenges which include things like spam, misinformation, copyright is obviously a really big thing, and we've heard all about that across music and the other creative industries, as well as kind of the whole sort of transparency sort of topic. How would you, what kind of focus would you give up, or thoughts would you share on those parts?
Well, I think that's kind of where we're tailing off 2023 with in terms of AI. I think we have most of the years been talking about, wow, look what it can do now, and look how clever it is, and look how amazing it could potentially be. But then we've kind of, in the last couple of months, been much more talk about there's going to be problems here, there's going to be concerns, and we've started to see regulators in the latter part of 2023 starting to think about how they're going to regulate this industry and how to protect people from some of the risks of the technology. But in terms of like here and now, real harms or problems that we can experience or expect to see more of, spam and misinformation, we're coming to a perfect storm with the election cycle coming around the corner, and the platforms like X who've cut a lot of their trust and safety teams. And to be honest, I don't think the other companies, particularly TikTok or Meta or others, have massively made leaps forwards in terms of content moderation and tackling misinformation than they did in a few years ago. And now they've got the additional challenge of people with the power of AI to create more of this content at speed and at lower cost and in more sophisticated ways. So I think that's going to be very problematic. It could be a particularly difficult year for some of the tech companies. I think copyright is also starting to come up as a bigger question. You know, what's fair use? What is reasonable use for the likes of a musician or an author or a journalist in terms of these large language models using this content? And then also, what risk does that present to brands and social media managers and marketers in terms of their use of these tools to use generative AI to create things? And we've started to see some of the major platforms give some level of protection and sort of liability acceptance to kind of stave off some of those concerns. But you know, there has been talk of now insurance policies for enterprises and businesses to shield themselves from the risks of anything that could go wrong with their own use of the AI in the marketplace. So those, and then I think finally the AI transparency. You know, that's what, you know, this week we've seen YouTube launch AI labels, and TikTok already has a version of that. I think the regular social media users are going to want to know when content has been altered, how it's been altered, and that certain types of content, like political content, which Meta has come out and sort of put limitations on AI use as well, that you know, they're shielded in some way. So that, you know, deep fakes, you know, I think I saw a stat today that's been a year-on-year increase of 3,000% in deep fake content, which shows you the kind of year we've had with AI. So yeah, it's not going to be all amazing. It's going to be challenging as well.
သူတို့စီမှာဘာတခု issue ဖြစ်လာနိုင်လဲဆိုတော့ကြတော့အဲ deep fake တွေပေါ့နော်ဥပမာကျွန်တော်မျက်နှာကြီးနဲ့ကျွန်တော်တခါမှပြောမသွားတဲ့စကားတွေကိုdeep fake တွေနဲ့ AI နဲ့လုပ်ပြီးတော့မှဟိုထုတ်ပြောလိုက်တဲ့ဖြန့်လိုက်တဲ့ scam တွေ spam တွေအများကြီးဖြစ်လာနိုင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ဥပမာကျွန်တော်ရုပ်ကြီးနဲ့ထည့်လိုက်ပြီးတော့လေသိမလားဟို9သိန်းလောက်ကြီးပါအောင်လို့3,500လောက်ကြီးပါအောင်လို့ဘာလို့ညာတော့ပုံစံမျိုးတွေနဲ့ဟို scam တွေလောက်လာနိုင်တဲ့ဟာမျိုးတွေသူတို့ကြိုပြီးတော့မြင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့အဲ့ဒီဟာတွေလည်းကျွန်တော် AI ကအကောင်းကြီးပဲမဟုတ်ဘဲနဲ့အဲ့လိုမျိုးဟိုတတိထားမဲ့ဟာတွေလည်းရှိတယ်ပေါ့
So Threads, you know, looks likely to be launched in Europe. It was a question mark for a little while, but I think it was expected it would anyway. There's now been signs spotted that the code inside the app shows that they're, you know, working on it. It's hard to gauge how close, but I would hazard a guess it could creep out before Christmas, but it might be sooner. We will see. I think that's going to be significant for the platform in general, but also other things that Threads is going to be working on, or has said it's working on, is an API, which particularly for marketers and social media managers is important for, you know, scheduling tools and being able to track content and do more. I think moving on to X, I think it's going to be a very similar year in many ways. I think that it'll be Elon saying how amazing the platform is and how safe it is. It's going to be the CEO trying to convince brands to come back and tell them it's safe, and then every week a new stat coming out to show it's not. The product features they're working on seem to be focused on money transfer, banking, still a little bit around, a lot around, video content. But you know, there's going to be a level of stagnation with the platform, and I think that the people that are, it's going to not necessarily lose millions of users. I think it's going to just be the people that stop using it as much are going to be replaced by the more extreme polarizing sides of the political spectrum who are seeking out this free speech kind of platform, which causes all the problems, or many of the problems that Elon has to now tackle. So I think we'll see a lot more of that next year. TikTok, I think heavily focused will be on shopping, and it will be also on building up the social aspect of the platform and the messaging features. It will have to face challenges with regulation. Calls for a ban in the US haven't really calmed that much, but I don't see it as likely as it was maybe 12 months ago that there will be a nationwide ban, but there is that on the horizon, and there's other regulatory issues for them in terms of things that are going on in Europe. So they will have another 12 months of navigating that and trying to get shops to take off for them, amongst many other things. I think in terms of WhatsApp, I think and LinkedIn are interesting to look up, because WhatsApp really has been talked up quite extensively by Mark Zuckerberg in his earnings calls this year and in press interviews. You know, seeing that, you know, if you want to see, I think there was a quote from him saying, if you want to see what a future social media messaging experience will look like, then look at WhatsApp, because the idea of possibly a more unified, intolerable inbox where you can message multiple platforms from there will become more of a thing. Business platform features is being ramped up because they're trying to monetize the platform. And I think channels will be significantly bigger and a larger part of what people use WhatsApp for. So I think those are going to be interesting. And I think LinkedIn, it's more the fact that I think X's downfall and the lack of threads pulling everybody in quite the way that maybe people expected has presented a great opportunity for LinkedIn. And also LinkedIn is just, it never feels quite as toxic and quite as hard work in terms of engaging with people. And so it feels like a bit of a breath of fresh air for, I think, for brands. And actually, it's been, people are seeing that it isn't all about B2B type activity and employment and productivity. There's much more to it. And they've been pretty good in the last 12 months putting out AI features. So I think those will be significant. But I'll pause there because I'm conscious we've only got like 7 or 8 minutes, and there are other things I could chat about. So I'll
ကြုံပြီးပြောရင်ပေါ့နော်အခုဒီသွားဖြစ်နိုင်တဲ့ဟာမျိုးကကျတော့ TikTok တွေဒီဆက်ပြီးတော့shopping experience ကိုပို့ပြီးတော့ဦးစားပေးလာနိုင်တဲ့ဟာမျိုးတွေရှိတယ်ပြီးတော့အဲ regulation တွေဆိုလို့ရှိရင်လည်းသူတို့မှာprivacy law တွေပါတယ်ညာတွေကတော်တော်ကြီးကိုဘယ်လိုခေါ်မလဲ enforce လုပ်လာနိုင်ကြရှိရပေါ့နော်တော်တော်ကြီးတော့တွန်းအားပေးပြီးတော့ဒီအစိုးရအဖွဲ့တွေကနေပြီးတော့association တွေကနေပြီးတော့မှလုပ်လာနိုင်ကြရှိရဟာမျိုးတွေများတယ်ပြီးတော့ကျတော့ဒီ Meta ရဲ့ ad free subscription ပေါ့နော်ဟိုကျွန်တော်တို့ personalize ဖြစ်တဲ့ content တွေဆက်ပြီးပြပေးမယ်ဒါပေမဲ့ဟို platform အသုံးပြုကပေးဆိုတော့ပုံစံမျိုးတွေကိုကျွန်တော်တို့ Meta မှာဟိုတွေ့လာရနိုင်ကြရှိရပေါ့
they have a private sharing. It starts to all feel much the same, and the differentiator is the CEO behind it and the brand that sits behind it, and the community and the sort of type and vibe of content. And TikTok has been, was massively successful because it landed particularly well with the craziness of the pandemic and its more joyful content and things. But I think to answer your question specifically, I think that I feel that they all do have a fairly sort of unique proposition and identity. I think X is lost, and I think that what Elon Musk is trying to do, or the image and the personality and the purpose you want to go to X and what he thinks it is either not realistically achievable, or it's not what the users are actually experiencing. And that mismatch amongst many other things makes it difficult for him. I don't think he particularly gets or understands sort of human engagement, human interaction and social platform particularly well, as much as he does engineering ships and rockets or whatever. So I think that's the problem. I think the Threads is the one where I think that's an interesting question, because Threads hasn't got much of an identity of its own. It's kind of part Instagram, sort of does things that people want it to do from Twitter and X, and it's got an audience of a mixture of those two audiences, Instagram and X, plus new people, and it doesn't do anything unique or better.
သူက thread ကိုအဲ့လိုကြည့်အောင်မမြင်ဘူးပေါ့လေဘာလို့ဆိုတော့ thread က half Instagram လို့ပုံလေးကျွန်တော်တင်လို့ရတယ်တကယ်ချင်းကျွန်တော်ချိန်လို့ရတယ်ပြီးတော့ half X Twitter လို့ပုံစံမျိုးဖြစ်နေတာဆိုတော့ကျတော့အဲ့ဒီ half Instagram half Twitter နဲ့တချို့လူသစ်တွေအနေနဲ့ကဒီ thread ကလုံးနိုင်တဲ့ unique feature reason to use ပေါ့နော်အဲ့ဒီ thread ကိုသုံးရမယ်ဟာအများကြီးရှိနေသေးရဲ့အချိန်မှာ thread ကိုတော့သူအနေနဲ့အများကြီးမျှော်လင့်ထားတော့မရှိဘူးပေါ့လေ
Yeah, because the exodus of particularly Gen Z or Gen Z and millennials, they're leaving Twitter X primarily to go to LinkedIn is where they're really migrating to. But Matt asked a great question, which is curious about the latest point of view and the conversations you've had with brands on prioritizing YouTube versus TikTok versus Instagram, particularly for a Gen Z audience. So again, it's interesting because a couple of years ago, these questions had never been raised. It was pretty much Meta and YouTube, which were kind of the big boys on the block, really. So that question around, how are brands prioritizing YouTube versus TikTok versus Instagram for that Gen Z audience, Matt?
Yeah, well, in general, YouTube has the benefit of being the dominant and the platform that most people think of for longer form content, and that's not really been challenged much by the other platforms because they've limited it to 5, 10, 15-minute content on there. But there is a chance that will extend because in Asia, I think the Douyin, the TikTok equivalent, has kind of extended beyond that. So we'll see if that happens. I think in terms of Reels versus Shorts versus TikTok, a bit like the question before around these platforms sort of all becoming very samey. it does feel and has felt for some time that there isn't huge levels of distinguishing features between them, and many creators and brands will cross all of them because there's enough similarity to do that, but often they focus on the one that suit them is best aligned with the sort of brand they are. If you're particularly a lifestyle and aspirational content, and you're kind of sorts of things you'd expect to see on Instagram, then Reels is going to be a far more useful platform, and it is still the leading main platform for creators and brand collaborations ahead of TikTok and ahead of YouTube. But if your kind of content is more kind of, that style that TikTok is famous for, it's rough and ready, it's slightly more quirky, and it is more probably a slightly younger again than Instagram, then TikTok is the one to go with. And then YouTube is an interesting one. I think it's a far more important platform for the creators, and it's a bigger decision for the creators than it is for brands. And I think brands generally are more comfortable using than Instagram out of all of those, probably, and then jointly with TikTok and YouTube, because YouTube's not quite the same as a social platform like the other ones are, although it's become more like it. So I think it has weighed up on its merits. I don't think there's one universal thing that clients are saying to me, oh, we're going to use it, but just YouTube now going forwards. I think it varies. But I think in priority, from a brand's point of view, I would probably say Instagram still slightly has the edge. And then depending on the reasons you're using it, it could be more of TikTok or more of YouTube as the other sort of secondary one.
Well, let's try and squeeze in to answer two more questions. So Jasmine's got a killer question in here, which is something that really resonates with me, which is, social users are frustrated with too much promotional content, and I've actually suspended my Instagram account. I barely see content from friends and family or even relevant targeted ads. It's often just poorly targeted, just noise. So she's asking, how can I express the value of brand awareness and non-promotional content to executives of a team focused on sales and revenue? It's a great question, and I've had my clients ask me that over the years, the last 10 years plus.
Well, it's the perennial question, isn't it? A social media manager being asked by their bosses to sort of say, justify their existence or the importance of things that's, stray into things beyond delivering a conversion to selling of a product and things. And there's never been a definitive answer as to the best way to approach it. But certainly when I would be doing is finding other sources of data beyond kind of the sales metrics and the engagement metrics that you can do from surveys, from email stuff, from any way you can capture more rich data and insights from your audience to talk about how they feel about the brand, how they feel about your presence, what they think about your content, how that relates to their behavior versus comparisons to other brands. That sort of information really adds something more than just the social stats, and finding ways to get that is particularly can be particularly powerful and particularly useful. I think also building case studies that for rival companies and how they're using it successfully, and the success that they've had with various collaborations or particular campaigns, and showing this is what our competitors are doing, and we're not doing these sorts of things, and this is the result that's driven for them that's stretched beyond sales. Nothing can rile somebody that's a proud senior exec and to say that the competition is doing something that we're not, and it's doing well with it. So I think that can be particularly useful. And then I think that in terms of just reporting in general, being smart with what you report to the senior leaders in organizations, having a couple of milestones achieved, some of the biggest achievements, things that you're tracking, just not endless stats and charts and tables and data points. Give them hard facts, a direction of travel that you're heading in, and what you're considering, what you're thinking, and what you're benchmarking against. Keep it nice and easy and digestible for them. That will sometimes go a long way, because the numbers will just be too much. That's what I would say.
Cool. Well, look, I think we've just run over time. I know there are plenty more questions. Look, if you'd like those addressed, please get in touch with your team at Amplify. Please email us.
Okay. သူနောက်ဆုံးမေးသွားတဲ့ဖြေဆိုသွားတဲ့မေးခွန်းကဘာလဲဆိုတော့ promotional content တွေအများများလာတဲ့အချိန်မှာcost တွေတော့တအားတက်လာတယ်ပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်တို့ CPR တွေတအားတက်လာတယ်ဆိုတော့ဟာကိုသူ့အနေနဲ့ပြောသွားတယ်အဲ့တော့အဲ့ဒီဟာရောMatt အနေနဲ့ဘယ်လိုမြင်လဲဆိုတာလေးကို ပြန်ပြီးတော့မေးတာပါအဲ့တော့ Matt ကတော့ဖြေလိုက်တဲ့ပုံစံကအဲ့ကျွန်တော်အမြဲတမ်းဖြေလို့ပါပဲကျွန်တော်တို့ benchmark data တစ်ခုထားတာပေါ့လေအဲ့တော့ကျွန်တော်တို့အများဆုံးဘယ်လောက်ပေးနိုင်တယ် cost per result ကိုဘယ်လောက်ပေးနိုင်တယ်ဆိုတဲ့ဟာမျိုးတစ်ခုထားတာပေါ့နော်အဲ့တော့ကျွန်တော်တို့ရဲ့အနည်းဆုံးနဲ့အများဆုံးပုံမှာအခြေခံလိုက်ပြီးတော့မှအဲ့ဒီအများဆုံးထက်ကျော်ရယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တတိထားပြီးတော့မှကျွန်တော်တို့ဟိုပူးဆုပ်ပါပေါ့ဟိုအဲ့ဒါဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တော့အများကြီးပို့ပြီးတော့အစင်ပြေနိုင်တယ်လို့တော့Matt ကတော့ခုနဖြေသွားပါတယ်အဲ့တော့ကျွန်တော်လည်းဟို level up မှာ level 1မှာကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီ client တွေအတွက်ကိုပို့ဆုပ်တယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကျွန်တော်တို့စီမှာအဲ့ cap တစ်ခုထားပေးတယ်ပေါ့နော်အဲ့တော့အဲ့ cap တစ်ခုထားပေးပြီးတော့မှအဲ့ cap တဲ့ကျော်သွားရဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကျွန်တော်တို့ client ကိုတတိပေးတယ် for example မတုံးတာမှာပို့ပြီးတော့ cost effective ဖြစ်နိုင်တယ်ဆိုတဲ့ဟာမျိုးကိုကျွန်တော်တို့ကတတိခံပေးရကျွန်တော်တို့ဘယ်လိုမျိုးအများနဲ့ပြင်ပြီးညှိကြလဲဆိုတော့ကျတော့ client စီနဲ့ကအဲ့ဒီ cost per result တစ်ခုကတအားကြီးတက်နေတယ်ဆိုတော့ဆိုတော့ဟိုဘယ်လိုမျိုးများလုံးနိုင်မလဲသူတို့ရဲ့ရောင်းအားကောဒါမှမဟုတ်သူတို့branding ကောဒါမှမဟုတ် brand loyalty ကောဘယ်လိုအခြေအနေမျိုးရှိလဲအဲ့ဒါမျိုးကျွန်တော်တို့တင်ရောက်ပေးပါလားဆိုတဲ့ဟာမျိုးကိုအပြန်လည်ဒီလုပ်ပြီးတော့မှကျွန်တော်ဆက်ပြီးတော့ပို့ဆုံးတင်လာဒါမှမဟုတ်လို့ရှိရင်အဲ့ဒီ boosting ကိုကျွန်တော်ရက်လိုက်ရမလားဆိုတဲ့ဟာမျိုးဒီလောက်ကြတယ်ပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ဒါကကျွန်တော် level up ကော level 1 ကောမှာလောက်ကြတဲ့ပုံစံတွေပါဆိုတော့ yeah အဲ့တော့ဒီနေ့Matt Navarra နဲ့ amplify ဒီ platform နဲ့ပြောသွားတာတော့ဒီလောက်ပါပဲဆိုတော့ hopefully အားလုံးလည်းနောက်ထောင်လိုက်ကြရမယ်လို့ထင်ပါတယ်ဂျာထဲမှာကျွန်တော် hiccup တွေချို့ဟို technical ဟိုဘက်ကောဒီဘက်ကောပေါ့လေနော်ကျွန်တော် UK မှာတော့မှဖြစ်နေရဆိုတော့လေအဲ့တော့hiccup တွေဖြစ်သွားတာ sorry ပါအဲ့တော့ကျွန်တော်တို့အခုနလေးနေရလေကျွန်တော်Alice Kai page မှာကျွန်တော် post လေးတစ်ခု share ထားပါတယ်အဲ့တော့ဒီ post လေးတစ်ခု share ထားရဆိုတာကကျွန်တော်အခုကျွန်တော်ဝင်မထားတော့ share လို့ပြော screen share လို့မရအောင်အဲ့တော့နောက်နှစ်မှာဘယ် platform ဆိုပို့ပြီးတော့သုံးကြမလဲဆိုတော့ဟာကိုကျွန်တော်တစ်ချက်မေးထားတာပါအဲ့တော့တစ်ချက်လေး Alice Kai page မှာကြည့်ပြီးတော့ဖြေပေးကြပါအောင်အဲ့တော့ကျေးဇူးအများကြီးတင်ပါတယ်ကျွန်တော်တို့နောက်တစ်ခါတွေလည်းဒါမျိုးဟို talk တွေ workshop တွေကိုlive လုပ်နေဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကြည့်ကြလားပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်လည်းအတူတူဟိုကျွန်တော်ကတော့အများနဲ့ကြည့်နေရတာဆိုတော့ကြတော့အများတော့ကြည့်ပြတယ်ပေါ့ဒါပေမဲ့ဒီဟာကျွန်တော်စပြီးတော့ send ကျွန်တော် live လွှင့်ကြည့်ရပါဖုန်းဘေးနဲ့ live လွှင့်တာပါ wifi သုံးစားမရလို့ဆိုတော့ဘေးတော့ဖြည့်ပေးကြပါကျွန်တော်ဖုန်းနံပါတ်ပေးပါမယ်ဘေးဖြည့်ပေးမယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကျွန်တော်ဖုန်းနံပါတ်ပေးပါမယ်ဘေးလေးဖြည့်ပေးကြပါအဲ့တော့ကျေးဇူးအများကြီးတင်ပါတယ်အဲ့တော့ဒီလိုမျိုး live ကိုစိတ်ဝင်စားရဆိုလို့ရှိရင်လည်းကျွန်တော်ချက်လေး comment ထဲမှာမှတ်သွားပေးပါကျွန်တော်နောက်ပိုင်းကျွန်တော်တက်နေတဲ့ live တွေမှာကျွန်တော်အခုလိုမျိုးဒီ live ပြန်လွှင့်လို့ရရဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကျွန်တော် live လေးပြန်ပေးပါမယ်အဲ့တော့ကျေးဇူးအများကြီးတင်ပါတယ်ဗျအဲ့တော့ကောင်းကောင်းညလေးဖြစ်ပါစေအဲ့တော့ bye bye